He's driving fast, not reckless, not frantic, decisive. It's 2018, Russia, and Earvin N'Gapeth is heading toward Novosibirsk airport. He isn't leaving after a championship. He isn't leaving after a season. He's breaking his contract. Back at the facility of Kuzbass Kemerova, the locker room is quiet. Training was scheduled. Players are waiting. The head coach is left speechless. Éric N'Gapeth, his father. When journalists ask where his son is, he doesn't dodge. What is going on? He decided to break his contract. I have no words to explain it. I found out about it an hour before our last training. An hour. In professional sport, that isn't just sudden, it's seismic. In Russia, contracts are law. Discipline is oxygen. And this isn't just a player leaving, it's a son walking away from his father, publicly. Rumors begin to swell, conflict, ego, disrespect. Months later, Éric N'Gapeth loses his job. For 3 years, father and son do not speak. This story doesn't begin in France. It begins in Douala, Cameroon, during a period when the country was fighting for independence from colonial rule. N'Gapeth's father would eventually leave Cameroon and build a volleyball life in France. That migration isn't background, it's origin, because identity, dual, layered, sometimes conflicting, would define the son. Born February 12, 1991, in Saint Raphael, France, Earvin N'Gapeth grew up in a volleyball household where expectations weren't spoken, they were assumed. When your father is your coach, there is no separation between life and sport, there is only performance. By adolescence, it's obvious. He's different, explosive vertical, elastic arm swing, spatial awareness beyond his age. But there's something else, expression, a willingness to improvise. Even as a teenager, he doesn't just execute drills, he experiments. That tension between inherited discipline and instinctive creativity will define everything that follows. Because in elite sport, structure builds champions, but instinct creates legends, and instinct does not always obey. Before the controversies, before the MVP trophies, before the courtroom headlines, there was a boy shaped by migration, expectation, and an uncompromising household. Talent reveals itself quietly at first. A slightly higher jump, a slightly sharper angle, a timing that doesn't match the rest of the room. By the time he reaches his mid-teens, coaches are no longer asking if he's good. They're asking how far he can go. At 17 years old, Earvin Ngapeth signs with Tours Volleyball, not as a project, as a contributor. Tours wins titles during his early seasons. French Cup, French Championship. The Prodigy becomes part of a winning culture almost immediately, but success accelerates scrutiny. When you are young and brilliant, people don't just watch your points, they watch your behavior. Every gesture becomes amplified, every reaction cataloged. Because when a player carries the surname of a former international and coach, neutrality disappears. He is not just Earvin, he is N'Gapeth. In 2010, at 19 years old, he is selected for the French national team at the FIVB World Championship in Italy. It should have been confirmation, arrival. Instead, it becomes rupture. Mid-tournament, N'Gapeth is expelled from the national team for disciplinary reasons. The federation does not frame it as tactical, it is behavioral. At 19, he is sent home from the biggest tournament of his life. There are moments in an athlete's career that define trajectory. This was one of them. For the federation, it was a message. Discipline matters. For N'Gapeth, it was public correction. The Prodigy, exposed. France is trying to build a competitive identity in international volleyball. Structure is non-negotiable, and its most gifted young outside hitter has already tested the boundary. Some players fracture under public discipline. Some internalize it. N'Gapeth does neither fully. He continues to evolve. He refines his technical base, improves reception, develops consistency in transition, gains physical maturity, adding strength without sacrificing elasticity. But the personality does not flatten, it sharpens. When you grow up in a household where performance is constant evaluation, public criticism does not shock you, but it can harden you. By 20, he has already experienced domestic success, European competition, national team elevation, national team dismissal. Most players encounter those phases across a decade. He absorbs them before 21. Pressure accelerates development, but it also accelerates friction. What separates N'Gapeth from many young talents is not just ability, it's audacity. He is willing to attempt plays others would not dare in tight moments. Reverse spikes at 23 to 23, off-speed touches under triple block, back row attacks from unstable transitions. In youth systems, coaches often restrict risk. N'Gapeth leans into it, because somewhere between Cameroon's historical resilience and French structural discipline, He has internalized something powerful. Control is not always the path to dominance. Sometimes unpredictability is. Over the next few seasons, N'Gapeth expands beyond France, competing in Italy and Russia, testing himself against stronger leagues and harsher systems. Italy demands tactical precision. Russia demands discipline and physical dominance. He adapts, but he does not conform completely. And that refusal to fully conform, that tension between system and self, is the thread that will run through every major chapter of his career. On the court, it produces brilliance. Off the court, it will produce headlines. Before the Olympic gold medals, before the courtroom reports. There was a 19-year-old sent home from a world championship. There was a teenager carrying a last name heavy with expectation. There was a prodigy learning that talent opens doors, but behavior determines how long they stay open.
17-15 to Poland yesterday afternoon. 3 sets to 2, and then we will get ready to go.
By 2015, something shifts. France is no longer a developing program, it is dangerous. A generation has formed, physical, expressive, unafraid. And at the center of it stands Earvin N'Gapeth. The FIVB World League final in Rio de Janeiro becomes a statement. France defeats Serbia in the final, gold. But this isn't just a team victory. N'Gapeth is named Most Valuable Player of the tournament. The same teenager once expelled from a world championship is now the axis of France's offense. Later that year, at the European Championship, France wins again. Back-to-back major titles in the same calendar year. The narrative solidifies. France's renaissance is real. N'Gapeth is no longer volatile talent. He is indispensable. But when spotlight intensifies, shadows sharpen. The success does not quiet the turbulence. In 2012, N'Gapeth is involved in a nightclub altercation in Montpellier. Legal proceedings follow. He receives a suspended prison sentence. In 2015, he is involved in a high-profile altercation with a train controller at Paris Montparnasse station. Legal proceedings follow. A probationary sentence, a fine. The most serious charges are later overturned on appeal. In 2016, while playing in Italy for Trentino, he is involved in a hit-and-run incident outside a nightclub in Trento. 3 people are injured, 1 seriously. He later presents himself to authorities. Italian courts issue a sentence, later subject to appeal. In 2017, Italian police stop him for driving under the influence. Reports state his blood alcohol level was significantly above the legal limit. His driver's license is suspended. Then, during a tournament in Brazil, he is arrested in Belo Horizonte following an allegation of sexual assault at a nightclub. He denies wrongdoing. Brazilian legal proceedings do not result in a criminal conviction. He returns to professional play. Each incident documented, each headline heavy. And yet, each time he steps onto the court, the conversation fractures, because performance complicates judgment. But controversy off the court was only one kind of rupture. The one before 2019 cut deeper. In 2018, the departure from Kuzbass Kemerovo isn't framed as scandal. It's framed as a transfer. But inside that decision, something far more fragile is breaking. This isn't just player and club, this is father and son. Earvin N'Gapeth, playing under the authority of Éric N'Gapeth. Bloodline and hierarchy, sharing the same sideline. In elite sport, structure matters. Systems demand obedience. Roles are defined. The coach speaks, the player executes. But autonomy grows louder with success. And by 2018, Earvin isn't just a talented outside hitter. He's a global star, an Olympic champion in waiting, a personality too large to be contained by paternal oversight. When he leaves Kuzbass, there are no dramatic interviews, no accusations, no public blame. He simply goes. And sometimes, silence says more than confrontation ever could. Soon after, Éric N'Gapeth's contract with the club is terminated. 2 exits, 1 fracture. Reports describe a distance that follows. 3 years without communication. No public reconciliation. No shared headlines. Just absence. In elite sport, pressure is constant. It is tactical, external, measurable. In family, pressure is intimate. It lingers in pauses, in unsent messages, in words chosen carefully, or not at all. When those 2 worlds collide, when authority at home mirrors authority at work, separation stops being professional. It becomes survival. And for Earvin N'Gapeth, the court has always been a stage of expression. But in 2018, it also becomes an escape. And yet, distance has a way of sharpening focus. The silence with his father lingers, but in Tokyo, the noise of the world replaces it.
finale des Jeux Olympiques de volleyball.
The pandemic reshaped the games. No roaring crowds, no packed stands, just athletes, lights, and pressure, amplified by silence. At the 2020 Summer Olympics, the French men's volleyball team does not arrive as favorites. They arrive as contenders, dangerous, talented, unpredictable. France survives the group stage. They eliminate Poland in the quarterfinal, the reigning world champions. They outlast Argentina in the semifinal, each match tight, each set contested. And then, the final, France versus the Russian Olympic Committee. 5 sets. Momentum swings like a pendulum. In the chaos of a deciding fifth, margins disappear. Execution becomes identity. Earvin N'Gapeth scores 26 points in the final. High hands, cross-court angles, off-speed touches that freeze blockers mid-air. Not reckless, measured. France wins in 5. For the first time in history, France wins Olympic gold in men's volleyball. N'Gapeth is named the tournament's most valuable player. The same player who carried headlines for suspensions and allegations now stands at the center of the podium, gold around his neck. But this isn't erasure. Nothing about 2017 disappears. Nothing about 2019 dissolves. The fracture with his father isn't rewritten, it coexists. Because validation is not the same as absolution. Validation is performance under the brightest light imaginable. In an empty arena, without a crowd to drown doubt, excellence becomes unmistakable. And in Tokyo, it is undeniable. Victory changes status, time changes perspective, and sometimes, distance creates the space that proximity never could. In the years after Tokyo, the silence begins to thin, not publicly, privately. No statements released to the press, no staged photographs, no carefully crafted captions, just a conversation between Earvin N'Gapeth and Éric N'Gapeth. 3 years of distance do not disappear in a single afternoon. They are acknowledged, measured, understood. In elite sport, ego is often armor. Coaches command, players resist. Independence feels like defiance. But maturity reframes conflict. A son grows into his own authority. A father learns when to release control. And sometimes reconciliation is not about revisiting the fracture. It is about recognizing why it happened. There is no headline announcing the repair, no viral clip capturing the moment. Because reconciliation, unlike scandal, does not demand spectacle. It requires humility. It requires time. And in the end, it requires 2 people willing to see each other, not as roles, not as coach and player, but simply as father and son. Reconciliation restores something personal, but legacy is built in public.
USSR and the USA, that a team has successfully defended the title. It's running. It's France on the top step to receive the gold medal at the men's indoor volleyball.
Home soil, expectation immense. France defends its Olympic title. Back-to-back gold medals. N'Gapeth is once again named MVP of the tournament. Few outside hitters in volleyball history have dominated 2 Olympic cycles this way. At 33, he is no longer the volatile teenager expelled from a world championship. He is composed, measured, but not reinvented. Still expressive, still animated, still unpredictable in style. Only now, the chaos is more contained. But triumph does not silence memory. It only makes the contrast sharper. Redemption in sport is rarely absolute. It is negotiated. N'Gapeth's career cannot be told without the courtroom headlines, and it cannot be told without the medals. Both are real. Both are documented. Technically, he remains one of the most creative outside hitters of his era, master of late wrist adjustment, back row acceleration, and transition scoring under pressure. Emotionally, he remains complex, loved fiercely, criticized intensely, studied endlessly. Genius rarely arrives polished. Sometimes it arrives defiant, sometimes impulsive, sometimes misunderstood. Earvin N'Gapeth is not a simple hero story. He is not a cautionary tale. He is tension between brilliance and impulse, between legacy and consequence, between father and son, between chaos and control. And as long as he steps to the service line, the story continues. Not clean, not perfect, but undeniably historic.